Cummins PowerPods, 60 years of powering India.
Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Cummins PowerPods. My name is Sheetal and I'm the anchor on this series that kicks off in a very special year for Cummins India. We mark 60 years of powering the nation. Now, a bit about Cummins India. We are a power solutions and technology leader, and we've been instrumental in powering India's growth story over the last 6 decades through innovative products and dependable solutions. Now, that said, we've decided to make it big for all of our listeners on the first episode of Cummins PowerPods by bringing in, guess who? Ashwath Ram is who I'm talking about, Managing Director, Cummins India, also, interestingly, a second-generation Cummins employee.
In conversation with Ashwath Ram on Cummins PowerPods.
Ashwath, thanks so much for joining us on the show. Welcome, and how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing really well, and thank you for inviting me to this session. I'm really excited to talk to you and the rest of our audience about this exciting occasion and this great achievement by the company of finishing 60 years in India. So really looking forward to this.
Yeah, and 60 years, it's no mean effort at all. It's an incredible milestone for all of Cummins India, and I think everyone has joined in the spirit of the celebrations. But you know what? I'm sure you've reflected back on the time that you spent in the organization and also the milestone itself. So how have you, from your vantage position, seen the company evolve over the past few decades?
It's an incredible amount of pride for all of us at Cummins in India that we are celebrating 60 years at the same time that India is celebrating 75 years of independence. And with this Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, we are also celebrating 60 years of powering India with innovation and dependability, and that makes me incredibly proud. It started pretty small in 1962 as a little company in a place called Kothrud in Pune. At that time, it was all surrounded by farms and guava orchards, and it was even difficult for people to, even get there.
Right.
And people used to be scared at night to come into work, etc. And now, if you look at that location, it's just bustling. It is surrounded by hundreds and thousands of buildings. It's become like a big metropolis, and we are bang in the middle there. So it's a very proud kind of occasion. And over the last 6 decades, from that very small start, we have really grown. We have provided all kinds of engineering solutions to the market, and we have propelled the path to prosperity and self-reliance. We have powered rail, defense, mining, transportation, healthcare, public infrastructure, information technology, and even if you see all the ISRO space missions, you will see that Cummins gensets and Cummins engines are either carrying equipment or being used as backup gensets. So there is no part of India, whether it's infrastructure or its power requirement or its growth, where Cummins has not played a part in. And even during this COVID pandemic, we were amongst the first to vaccinate all our people, their families, the suppliers and their families. So it feels incredibly proud to have participated in this journey and this growth of the country. I think another area where we are proud of what we have achieved is in this whole area of diversity and inclusion. First of all, we believe in all forms of diversity, whether it's gender diversity, regional diversity, cultural diversity, religious diversity. So we believe that, we are one country and our company should represent our country. And with that in mind, we start off by set up in Pune, but we have grown. We have something like 400 or 500 branches spread all over the country. And then we have dealerships and support networks. There is no 50-kilometer radius from any point in India where a Cummins dealer or location is not present to provide service and support to our customers.
Wow.
And when we talk of diversity, we have really strived hard to bring in folks from different parts of India into our company. And from a gender diversity perspective, I would say before 2000, our gender diversity was at something like 5 or 6%. And by 2011, we had already grown it to almost 16%. And as of today, we are hovering somewhere in the mid 30s. At the peak, we had grown almost as high as 37%. This pandemic has been a little bit of a setback as there has only been attrition and no new hiring. But I think we are committed in the future to meet a goal of getting to 50% or parity for women. And we are going to be pushing very aggressively to meet that commitment as well.
Superb. And more power to you, no pun intended at all, as we take next few steps into this journey. A lot of folks at Cummins already know that your late father, Mr. Ramachandran, also led Cummins as a MD. And you are a second generation employee at Cummins. So I'm sure you have some memories from growing up, from your childhood, that are somewhat linked to Cummins. Please share a few of those with our listeners.
Yeah, so give you a little bit of a background. My father came from Coimbatore and later from Chennai. He had a lot of setbacks as he was growing up. His dad had a paralytic stroke, and so he was brought up with very poor relatives. So in very, very early in his career, he moved to Pune and joined Cummins as its first quality control leader, and then went on over the next 25-30 years to later become the head of the company. So he was a very different kind of personality. He was an incredibly hardworking person, very, very optimistic about life, and very, very passionate and driven. He would work 7 days a week and, work 12, 14 hours a day. So I got to see a lot of that growing up. Even as a young child, I got to go with my dad when he used to go at night to make factory rounds. I remember as a young kid going to the factory and watching all this equipment being built. It would really be fascinating towards me, and to me, my dad was the most important guy in the world. And so to hang around with him and learn something from him and walk around the factory, it made me feel really, really great about myself. And he never asked me to come and work for Cummins. He was like, try to do whatever you want to do and be the best at what you want to do. But just watching him there and having those experiences of going to the factories, going to some meetings and sitting in the background and, watching all of these things, I was fascinated. And then later I thought this is something I want to do. And that's how I also decided to join Cummins and come and work here.
So, when one says something like, I just realized this, Ashwath, growing up with an organization, in your case, you literally grown up watching the organization, and you yourself have grown up actually at the same time. So this is such a sweet anecdote that you've shared with us. Lovely to hear that.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I used to be cursing my dad when I was younger because there never used to be any summer holidays. When I was in high school, in some summer holidays, he would say, okay, come and go and work in the factory. So he would get special approval, and then I had to work in different parts of the factory. So right now I can, laugh about it. Those days I used to be like, hey, everyone else is having fun and I'm working in this damn factory. So yeah, it's an experience.
And clearly your father seems to be a very influential person in your life. But if I were to ask you, who are the three most influential people in your personal and professional journey and career at Cummins? And with reasons would also be nice.
Yeah, so I've been lucky to have some amazing bosses. My first three bosses were all women. The first one was my first boss called Dr. Ann Newman. Right. She was a PhD. She was a grandmother. She was one of the smartest persons I ever met. What she did for me as this brown Indian guy who was just coming out of university and joining Cummins, she gave me complete independence to go out, try different complex projects, make my own mistakes, feel completely supported, and always made to feel like what work I was doing was incredibly valuable to the company. So that was my first entry into work. And it was such a positive experience of working with her that it really changed the way I thought about how managers should be.
Right.
My second boss was when later on I went and worked on my own. I set up my own companies and I was working with my wife. So I always joke that when you work with your wife, you work for your wife. So that was my second experience of working with women, and that also taught me a lot about how to create the right kind of balance. What am I good at? What is somebody else good at? How do I provide the right kind of space and environment to make somebody work and be successful?
Right.
But the second woman who was my boss at Cummins was when I came back to Cummins in early 2007. Was a lady called Lisa Yoder, and she was also an amazing woman. I learned a lot from her, attention to detail, how to look at a problem and solve a problem. And later on, she worked through a very complex journey. She was diagnosed with cancer, and then she spent the next 5, 6, 7 years working and fighting through the cancer and taking care of her children and taking care of work. So it gave me a very great insight on how a great leader is developed, how they balance out things, how they deal with trauma and turmoil in their own lives. Of course, later on, very sadly, she passed away, but she left so many strong leadership qualities in me from watching her that she was incredibly influential in my life.
Right.
And of course, the third most influential person was a former chairman of the company called Tim Solso. He was a great friend of my dad, and I used to see him and my dad work together when I was very, very young. I used to see how open they were, how they would communicate very, very openly, how it was no hierarchy, but no bullshit, and very, very plain speaking, very authentic, very down to earth, but very, very focused and driven, having the right kind of values. So I learned those kinds of things by watching him as I was growing up. So I would say these were the three most influential people from Cummins in my journey, in my life.
I'm putting a few things together over here, even as you talk, Ashwath, and I'm thinking that the first, response when you articulated the pride that you felt in the Cummins brand, you focused quite a bit on diversity. And it's very clear for me why, coming from the highest level of leadership in the organization, we have this, and that's why we are able to realize those objectives so seamlessly. But of course, there is more. What excites you about the future of Cummins India? I'm sure there's a lot in the market realities, the dynamics, and so on. There are global headwinds, etc., that are influencing the decisions, the direction the organization is likely to take.
Yeah, I think from where Cummins is placed and where India is placed, we are at this incredible inflection point. I feel that the next 10 to 15 years are going to be for India and for Cummins in India what it was for China in the late 90s and early 2000s, when they had nearly 15 or 20 years of non-stop growth, and which made them from an average economy into a great economy. Right. I think similar things are getting ready to happen in India because there are 3 or 4 trends or tailwinds which are all supporting us. The first, of course, is this move towards a zero carbon world. And Cummins has committed to go to zero carbon by 2050. India has committed to go to zero carbon by 2070. Right. But as we go on this journey, there are incredible new technologies, new tools, all of which Cummins leads in and in which Cummins has made significant investment in, which are all getting ready to be launched as well as to escalate in their growth at such a pace that we can't even imagine right now. And this represents an incredible opportunity for Cummins in India because we are a big player in infrastructure. And India has decided that we are going to become a top 4 or top 3 nation in the next 20 years. And for that to happen, we are going to have to spend trillions of dollars on infrastructure. Right. And anywhere infrastructure is being developed, Cummins has the largest part to play in those kinds of opportunities. And so there's a huge opportunity from a market perspective, from a growth perspective, from a perspective of learning, from a perspective of introducing new technologies, from making the environment cleaner and moving to zero carbon, zero emission products. So every area where Cummins is looking for growth is an area where India is looking for growth. And so for the first time, there is a lot of alignment in the country's objectives and where Cummins has got products to make, sell, and where we excel at, where we are market leaders at. And that's what gives me a lot of confidence that the plans we have set for ourselves, those are absolutely doable. We have seen it in the last 2-3 years that those plans are coming into place. We are seeing incredible opportunities open up. So feeling very, very excited about the future for Cummins in India and for every single individual in the company.
Any products, any launches that you're particularly excited about that you can't wait to get to, Ashwath?
We are probably going to launch in January some very, very exciting products with hydrogen. We are going to launch this incredible range of new technology which Cummins has recently launched in a few other markets around the world. So really excited about that. This is cutting edge technology which is just right for our country, and we are very, very positive about how we can transform the industry by launching that.
You know, somewhere in that response on how we are aligned to the nation's objectives in general, you also mentioned a very important opportunity for all of us, and that is of learning. So I thought I must focus my next question on learning. Do you have any pointers, Ashwath, for people tuned in, people who are starting out their careers or in the middle of it, from your own experiences of having crafted a success story for yourself as a leader of an organization like Cummins?
Yeah, I think it's right now, as I mentioned, there are so many things happening. So it's each person has an opportunity to transform themselves. The idea here is that if earlier in your career you can look at yourself and say, how can I become a more authentic leader? How can I be more caring? How can I be more empowering? How can I demonstrate integrity? How can I be more diverse and more inclusive of not only people but other ideas as well? And how can I work well in a team and make something successful? So if you think about how you can work on yourself and improve on these kinds of core values, being successful at work or being successful in business will come almost automatically.
I also want to draw your attention to the other stakeholders, the external stakeholders. I'm sure you have a message for them, seeing as we are completing 60 years of powering India, their role has to be underlined as well. What would you like to say to the other stakeholders who've been part of this journey at Cummins?
I think we are very grateful. We have some of the best customers. We have some of the best suppliers in the world. We try to do a lot of work in our community, for our community, and they have been incredibly supportive in this whole COVID period. For example, we were one of the few companies who were, because of our great stakeholder relationship, we were able to work longer, we were able to get people into work, we were able to protect our people, we were able to influence the whole community to take vaccines and make everyone safer. So I feel incredibly privileged with the kind of stakeholders that we have. And my message to them is that we are in a great journey and we need your continued support to keep us going, make us more successful than we have been today. And the journey will be amazing, but the end goals are even more amazing than what we've seen in the past.
Thank you so much for making this a kicker of a 60th milestone special podcast. Cummins PowerPods on air. Thanks, Ashwath, for joining us on the show.
Thank you, and wonderful to talk to you.
Cummins PowerPods, 60 years of powering India in voice.